Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, we're going to talk about Jason Wilcox, Dan Ashworth, Sir Jim pushing ahead, Nagelsmann, manager rumors, injuries and center backs, and so much more. So let's get into it. Okay, so obviously, first and foremost, at the start of the week, in a video I posted, I believe on Tuesday, I mentioned that it was definitely, or maybe it was in the podcast I first brought it up, but it was definitely not an accident that Sir Jim Ratcliffe was in town, that he was pushing through on a few things, and that it was being heavily stressed by INEOS leadership now that they needed to get certain appointments done. So let's kind of talk through them and look at it. Number one, Jason Wilcox, the information that I have is that this is virtually wrapped up, that he is working on, getting through, that he's working on getting through, how would I put this? That he's working on getting through some business with Southampton, and then likely would be joining. The information I have is that I tweeted out earlier in the week that he would likely be starting around the beginning of May for United. That's kind of the target right now. They still have to finalize the compensation agreement, but the talks have gone well, and they expect that that's not going to be a problem. Everybody's kind of working on the same page at this point in time, and it looks like they're ready to push ahead and just get this done very shortly for him to get started. Dan Ashworth, obviously, you had the big story that broke yesterday about Sir Jim having face-to-face talks with Amanda Stavely about potentially kind of pushing through the impasse on this. And, the situation as it remains is this. I'll talk about this from a few different perspectives, but INEOS know right now they need to start making these big decisions for summer, and it does include the manager situation and what's going to happen there. And in some of these cases, they do not feel that they're totally qualified to do so. I think that's part of the benefit of these people as owners, and why I kind of think that they're a good thing for the club, is they're aware of knowing what they don't know. And they know that they would not necessarily be the right person to decide the exactly on the manager. There's some things I think that have been decided, but they're not going to go willy-nilly doing things. And they know that they want proper people to assess the situation and look at it. Options, what they could do, what they can't do long-term, how the role would establish itself, because that ties into how and which people fit into it, including Ten Hag himself, and how that all works. So they want this done, and then there's, of course, the whole matter of recruitment. It is really going to be a club-led and focused recruitment process this summer, where they want to recruit young players. They want to recruit from South America. They want to buy good young English players. They have a huge focus on certain areas of the team, but they really want to make sure it's all well aligned with, a strategy. Omar Barada can influence that and has his ideas. They do want to focus on youth, and someone like Jason Wilcox is heavily experienced in this area on bringing in youth and young players and integrating them into the team and making that work. And that's part of why they want to keep Darren Fletcher, is to help, in addition, with bridging the gap between youth and first team, and how you balance when these players come in and getting them settled in, coaching them into the team, all of that. With Dan Ashworth, he's obviously the kind of the head honcho of how do you organize all of this and make this all set up? How do you structure it all? And in addition to that, making sure it's all really in line from a football standpoint and a manager standpoint. And as it is right now, with how difficult it's been with Newcastle, they cannot talk at all. They cannot make contact and really get into things and all of that. It's not worth the risk. So they want to wrap this up. And as far as I understand it, I think that was sort of the hint I was given earlier in the week, that John Murtough leaving has a lot to do with progress being made here, and that there has been progression through on these things. With Wilcox for sure, with Ashworth I think as well. There's now been some progress, and they really want to get to work on it with people that they trust and that they know. And I think in addition, they don't want a situation where they start working with really diving into the details on signings, recruitment, and all these aspects with somebody that they're going to let go in the summer, who might have, information, things like that too. They just really want their own people. This has been always the case from the start, and they're ready. So I believe there's been some progress made on Dan Ashworth as well as Jason Wilcox, that there's a bit more, with Wilcox for sure, but with Ashworth, a bit more hope that he can get started sooner rather than later. And so idea being that between Wilcox and Barada come, May, they can really start to, later in April, May, they can really start to move forward on some of their plans and line things up. And then hopefully Ashworth starting in June or at the end of the season would be still the goal, that I'm not sure how likely it is yet, but still the goal, that then they can be sure that what they're doing is in alignment with him. And that way, when they're ready to do deals, well, international deals you can't really do till after, finalized until after July 1 anyway, but that they're ready to move forward on these deals, that, they kind of like prepare and then get the final guy in to approve and all of that. It kind of makes sense. It's a tricky situation timing wise, but they know the importance of it. And so let me talk about this stuff with Julian Nagelsmann, because there were some things I said on the podcast that were taken as a clip of something, and then there were some other things, and then there's a bunch of rumors flying around, and I just want to discuss this a little bit. Number one, I said this a long time ago. It totally holds true. Prior to getting into United, the INEOS team were looking at contingency plans for the managers, and they were discussing, talking with, and looking at a lot of different options through different avenues and channels that they have. They have a ton of contacts in sport. They have a ton of contacts with managers, and they were looking through all of these things to just look at it. I mean, the Glazers could have sacked Ten Hag. They had the remit to do it. So, there's a lot of reasons, if you think about it, why they'd want to draw up those contingency plans. And from as I gather it, initially, Nagelsmann was somebody for some time that they viewed as probably not an option for just in terms of fit, not that they don't like him. And so it's kind of ruling itself out. That being said, one of the reasons, again, that they want to get these people in like Wilcox and Ashworth is that if they decide that a change is what's going to happen at the end of the year, and if that's what's forced, or hey, what if Ten Hag even walks, then they think that correctly, they're not necessarily qualified to have the types of discussions that would be necessary to see if somebody could fit, or if there's a fit that would work with a manager like Julian Nagelsmann. And so I think they would like those people in to, if that's the decision that gets made, or if even if Ashworth comes in and they haven't decided to let Ten Hag go, but they want to assess candidates and see if there's a better candidate on the market. Again, if you think about it like an interview for the job, they think they want, people like Wilcox and Ashworth to be more qualified to discuss how that manager would work within the club, where maybe it becomes more interesting to said party. That being said, I don't really know much about Nagelsmann, and from what I've heard, he definitely wants to focus on the Euros. Whether that means there's some discussions now that have already occurred with us or otherwise, then where he feels a little more settled about what he's going to do, and so now he wants to focus on the Euros, or it's just that he wants to totally decide afterwards. I don't know. I don't know enough about it in that respect. But so it's a matter of, again, this is why they're pushing these things through, because this holds true for transfers and everything as well. They don't want to be stuck with their own assessments of things, where professionals who are more experienced would be able to potentially make different assessments and get people in that maybe they thought weren't a good fit, player-wise as well, or the reverse, that they thought were a good fit, that, hey, that's not the right idea. They want help. They want help. They know they need it. They want people who are professionals making decisions, and they know now is the time. So there's a huge push on this. They don't want to get left behind this summer on all the things that need to get done, which comes to the transfer point of this. They're ready to make further contacts to start lining deals up. But kind of the stages where it's at. They've narrowed things down to, I think, some key players in certain positions, which we've discussed, and I'll probably do another one of those live videos soon to kind of push it a little bit tighter on the lists of who they want to sign. And then they need some sales too, and they've kind of done a lot of the work, a lot of the groundwork on these. They've tightened it up. They want to push ahead, but they've got to make the right decisions on those players, and they want the right people making those contacts and getting involved. So right now it's a little bit of done by committee with John Murtough leaving. They want somebody to really come in and influence that committee a bit more, and then of course someone to be in charge of it. So tricky situation, but they know, timeline wise, time to press ahead on that kind of short list and move it forward. And part of that is the injuries and center backs situation, I think is obviously an area of major focus. It's an area of major focus. They were looking at young Anselmino from Argentina. A lot of other players in the young area market, but Ralph Alvaren's injured for a while. He's played 50% of the games, I think, for United at this point in time since he's been here, which is a horrible record. He's very likely to depart on a free. They need center backs. They need center backs, at least one, maybe two, maybe more, and that is a huge area of focus. Gerard Braithwaite continues to be of interest, strong interest. And a very strong candidate for this. But I think, in an ideal world, what INEOS are likely going to want to do, based on what I can see, is maybe get a good top center back in, or someone like more expensive, I guess I should say, center back in, and a young center back they can develop. And that might go for each position, getting a more ready forward in and getting another young forward, getting a ready midfielder in and a young midfielder. And that way, doing it right, that they have, even potentially players on loan and such, where they can build things up and have ready-made players to step in, where they're not always having to buy in the future for every single position. Again, getting the Mbappes before they're Mbappes doesn't just mean getting the world's best player, but in each position, getting really good players before they become that. While also recognizing right now, you need some reinforcements. So yeah, on the transfer front, though, I definitely think with the concept of it being a multi-year project to sort things out. Center back situation really continues to be of interest, and in recent months, recruitment meetings, there has been a lot more focus on South America. And one of the things I'm aware of is that Sir Dave was involved in sitting in on certain discussions on recruitment, on meetings, things like that, not to insert his opinion, but kind of to oversee it and to understand the process. And I think that's why they made the decision that something needs to happen. The gaps in the hierarchy, now that we're coming in sort of crunch time in the transfer window, I think have really shown up heavily now to INEOS, exactly how all these mistakes get made. And that's why they said, okay, it's time. We got to get somebody in now and move along from how things have been running with Murtough here. Whether he's to blame or whether the setup is to blame, either way, it's both. We've got to get this sort of wrapped up now. So I would definitely expect that the center back situation is where they push ahead with first on getting some major targets in and work being done. But yeah. Maybe the next few weeks, it's a little quiet. The gist that I gather is that essentially INEOS are at the point where they feel the season's pretty much over. And that now they're ready to be making these big decisions, and they need these people in. And they are pressing ahead with them, and progress is being made. And I think that right now, I would just keep an open mind as to what can happen next. Okay? So thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. I'll definitely update more specifics on Ashworth if I start here, more specifics as I have on Wilcox, as well as, when they start to press ahead on these transfers, if they do so before Wilcox comes in or not. But I'll definitely just be continuing to give a kind of as much of a play-by-play updates on what's going on as possible through all of this. yeah, it's not always that I get good information like I had earlier in the week on what INEOS were doing and pushing ahead with. But when I get it, you know that it's good in terms of what they're doing. So I appreciate everybody here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.